The Echo Chamber, brought to you by The Holmes Report and produced by the international broadcast specialist Marketeers. And sponsored by March Communications, connecting innovation and people.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Echo Chamber podcast. This is Arun Sudhaman. We're recording this one in the lovely city of Dubai, where the Holmes Report is hosting its first Dubai Innovation Summit tomorrow, and we're joined by one of the speakers from the event, a repeat offender as far as the Echo Chamber is concerned. I think this is your third appearance. It's Alex Malouf from P&G and IABC and MEPRA and various other PR organisations.
Yeah, I've been a very, very naughty boy, you know, obviously in this life or in the previous life to make now 3 appearances.
Yeah, you have.
On the podcast.
Well, yeah, but, you know, you say that, but we always enjoy having you on because you are willing to discuss anything, as we'll soon find out. And also you ask questions, which I think is refreshing.
I'm no holds barred, but also as well, Aaron, you're a wonderful host and you really should be working in PR.
Well, perhaps. Well, perhaps not. I think I'm better off on the outside, observing. So, we have the conference tomorrow. We're going to be doing a session on talent, which is an issue close to your heart, I think. In fact, it was your idea to put this panel together. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm moderating it. And not only is this conversation going to be useful for our listeners, it will be useful for me because it will help me prepare for tomorrow's session. It strikes me, as it does in many markets around the world, frankly, that the issue of talent is actually the biggest obstacle to growth of the PR industry. Is that the case here as well?
I think that's undoubtedly the case, especially the lower level.
Mm-hmm.
Agencies have a particularly difficult time in terms of finding fresh talent or juniors in the industry who then will stay in the industry and develop careers. And this is particularly a challenge in this region due to the nature of the different cultures here. One thing which we'll be discussing tomorrow is, for example, the Arabic language. 200 million Arabic speakers, and yet the industry in the region is still very much slanted towards the English language. That's one issue. I think another issue is in terms of bringing on the locals, seeing what we can do in terms of developing them and developing their skills so that they're comfortable at taking on communications at any level. And also, as well, there's the issue of essentially pivoting to a digital age. And we talk a lot about digital, but you look at societies here, everybody is consuming content online. Everybody's doing it on mobile.
The sites they can access. And
of course, we're very careful what we access in this region.
Yeah.
But also as well, it's the understanding of how you can best use digital tools in terms of reaching out. And this is why we need to bring in younger blood, people who are much younger than me, who know how to use Snapchat. But in all seriousness, people who are digital natives, who see everything around them, and who are able to do this, because they've grown up with it.
So the issues you mentioned are in some respects universal, but I suspect there are some specific local factors as well. Is the industry doing a good enough job positioning itself as a destination of choice for the best young people in the region, the people who are digitally fluent, who can understand client issues and can bring a range of skills to the equation?
Well, look, if I was going to be a teacher, I'd probably give us a pass. but we can do much, much better. I don't think the industry does enough with universities, doesn't do enough with even high school students who are looking at what they should be studying next. And you find a lot of people, again, like in other markets, they gravitate towards the industry after they've already graduated, after they've already worked maybe a couple of years in the media or done something else. We're still not bringing enough young talent through the education sector. And that's why, when people say to me, we have a talent issue, I always respond and ask, what are you doing then to solve this? How are you going to universities? How are you engaging with these students? How are you showing young people the good that we do and getting them excited about having a career in the industry? That's missing today, especially in this region, where we do have universities who offer communications as a major. But there's that gap between, again, what they learn in terms of the classroom, the theory, and then the practice of what we do. So, even if they've already decided, I like comms, I like the sound of it, we are still not stepping in and actually showing them, how it matters practically in terms of the function.
You mentioned the issues around localization, kind of bleeds into the debate, but the problem with diversity. It's not hard to see in this region, much like I think many Asian markets were a decade ago. Most of the agencies, at least, seem to be led by experts, by non-nationals. And many of the local executives seem to wind up in government. How do you address that?
Look, it's a tough one. If I was a local and I had the option of going for a nice government salary, shorter working hours, I've worked agency side, so I understand the pressures of working on agency side, and you sometimes get days where you work very long hours. You don't go home until the sun has set, and that's on a good day. Why would they want to come to work in the private sector? And likewise, on the agency side, can agencies here afford salaries which would appeal to the locals? I don't envy agencies in terms of looking at attracting locals, and also as well, government entities need to understand the importance of diversity. If you look at, say, UAE, or if you look at other countries in the Gulf, the nationals are actually a minority in the population, and yet when you look at government departments, pretty much they're all national, and yet they're still serving an expat population.
Right.
So
Point. Yeah.
Unless you're actually able to understand the people you're serving, then how can you communicate with them?
But do they think about it that way?
There is a strong feeling as well among many nationals in terms of wanting to work in government because they want to serve their country.
Okay.
Which again, is a very noble sentiment, but also as well, my argument is, look, helping diversify the economy, working in the private sector, showing others, expats, what your culture means, and educating them in terms of how they can better understand you and again the local society. That is also important to us. We can't, for example, agencies can't pretend to do government work without having nationals on their books. Because again, you've got to think about the language, Arabic language, but it's not just the Arabic language, it's local traditions, local customs. And plus as well, we're in a region which relies heavily on relationships. It's not about essentially what you know as often as who you know.
Yeah.
So we've got to address these issues, and I think again the industry has stayed away from discussing both sides because it's convenient, but we've got to have honest, transparent debates about the issues of getting locals into the private sector, especially on the agency side, and also as well encouraging governments to understand the importance of diversity in terms of their communications makeup. It can't purely be about just hiring nationals for the sake of hiring nationals. Again, okay, we understand the localization drive, getting more nationals into the function, employing more nationals, but you've also going to have the skills to be able to communicate with your entire audience.
Yeah, that's a tough one, I think. More money, better hours.
Well, what would you choose? I know you choose the right thing, Aaron.
These options aren't open to me,
Okay.
Alex. Maybe you, but you know.
Well, you're a well-paid journalist, it's okay.
I'm a journalist. But you know, I left the corporate world a long time ago. I look back wistfully, fondly, my days at Weber Shandwick. But no one, as you know full well, no one in their right mind works in the media in order to make a lot of money. I suspect you could probably look at the disparity between agency and government and maybe draw similar conclusions.
I have known people to earn very good salaries in terms of government, but yeah, I think my point still holds. We've got to do much more. And the funny thing is, I do know I know some locals who work in the private sector. It is happening in certain markets. You know, for example, in Bahrain,
Right.
you see Bahraini nationals working in the private sector. You also see it in Oman. Also in Saudi, it's becoming more of a trend.
Okay.
But we need to make it happen in the other markets as well. We need to push more heavily, and we need to get more locals seeing the private sector as an option. And also as well, we need to break down, I think, the misunderstanding among the private sector in terms of the ability of locals to do a good job.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of those markets. Let's talk about Qatar, which is kind of off limits at the moment. I'm curious to know your view, because obviously there's this sort of, I don't know how you describe it, standoff, blockade?
Misunderstanding. Maybe.
Misunderstanding. But in any case, you have a situation where Qatar is somewhat isolated and is not really trading with its Middle Eastern partners. Flights have stopped. For the PR industry, it's an issue because one of the things I'd observed, many of us have observed, is the growth of the industry in Qatar over the last few years. Many international agencies have set up offices there. They have grown those offices. There's been a lot of assignments coming with the World Cup. Big spenders like Qatar Foundation, big projects. What does all of this mean